Shipping goods from China may not be so desirable at the moment as freight rates have increased astronomically since the beginning of the year. According to Hellenic Shipping News, the issue is caused by a shortage of shipping containers in China and other parts of Asia because they are stuck in the wrong places. In the first half of 2020, a global slowdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic meant many shipping lines were cancelled. Now, Asian economies are restarting their engines and Western demand for China-made goods is on the rise. But congestion at European ports due to lockdowns means the containers can't be returned to Asia, so there aren't enough shipping containers where they need to be, and prices increase as companies fight for the few containers in circulation. The Shanghai Shipping Exchange Freight Index cost climbed to 2,048.27 in May, which was over 2 times the figure of 855.34 in April, according to some importers. The cost of shipping goods from China to Europe have gone up by 700%. Some countries have halted importation of certain goods. Freight rates between Shanghai and the UK, for instance, rose nearly 4 times between March and November, while rates from Shanghai to Los Angeles more than tripled. This has also impacted the local retail market in the past month, mainly because several local retail businesses rely on Chinese imports. It's believed that some businesses have folded up, hoping for a reduction in freight charges to resume their operations. According to CGTN reports, it can cost as much as $5,000, up from $1,300 in March, to put a container on a ship and send it somewhere. Some carriers are now charging even more than that, calling it a peak season surcharge, which is usually several hundred more dollars per container. So today, we thought it wise to look at the perceived impact of the high freight cost on some local businesses. Businesses who depend on imports, especially from China, could see a drastic increase in freight costs. The increase in shipping charges has had a significant impact on businesses in Ghana. So today, we thought it wise to look at the perceived impact of the high freight cost on some local businesses. The increase in shipping charges has had a significant impact on businesses in Ghana, particularly businesses who depend on Chinese imports. Business owners are contemplating on absorbing the cost or passing it down to consumers. China is a major import origin for most Ghanaian consumer goods. Some businesses have already folded up due to the sharp increase in freight. However, some importers say the rising cost of freight only affects goods shipped from China and not goods shipped from the rest of the world. Mr. Paul Oscar Ankoma, director of Oscar Park Enterprise, believes that since African countries don't export as much as needed, freight cost of goods shipped to Africa are generally high as compared to freight charges of goods shipped to other continents.
Because of the COVID, production has slowed down, and therefore it takes time for shippers to get the load that they want to export at a particular time. And mostly the price has increased due to the fact that, after the COVID or during the COVID, China were the only country who started production initially. So they produced a lot and they were exporting, but in return they were not getting goods back. So it contributed that when all the containers go to destinations, it doesn't come empty. So they are stocked up at wherever they ship to, and therefore the containers that they needed to do more exports were locked up in other destinations. China, for instance, as I am aware, exports to about 300 destinations across the world with about 150 countries. So when the containers are locked up and they produce and they don't get this thing, so any container that is leaving, there's the demand over there. So it tries to play some games by increasing the prices. And this has contributed much to the African countries who didn't do much export. Because when the containers comes and they don't have any goods in return, it goes empty. But when it takes, at the moment, when it goes to Europe or America, for instance, they get goods back. So in return, they get something. But other like African countries like Ghana, for instance, because we don't do much export, the containers leave empty. And therefore, they try to include whatever they want to get from Ghana. If not, they will not export. So people in Africa pay more compared to those who import from to America and elsewhere.
Mr. Paul Oscar Ankoma says the import sector, like most sectors, creates employment. Therefore, any halt in operations has a rippling effect.
Let's take it for instance. Me, as an importer, right, have about 7 people employed, and another way we have about more than, let's say, 100 people, casual laborers, customers, and other way that we employ. We have drivers who cut our goods. We have maids and other people. We have truck pushers and all sorts of these things. So one person can, one way or the other, can employ a lot. The high freight has affected a lot of businesses because, whatever it is, anything that a businessman on care has to spread it over his cost. So definitely it affects, when you increase it, the freight, it affects the economy, and in fact the ordinary person or the ordinary buyer.
We singled out the youth clothing business to highlight the impact of the recent hike in freight charges. Ghana imports used clothing from several countries. Mr. Oscar Ankoma also doubles as the national patron of the Used Clothing Association. He gives details of these destinations and how the increase in freight rate is affecting the business.
The used clothing business, we saw this from almost all over the world, because some brings in from Korea, some from China, from Europe, like UK and Germany and other stuff. And for instance, I bring in from America and Canada. In Ghana, the exchange rate and the dollar is very high. So increasing a little or just a cent will affect the cost.
Edward Antoba Binkley is the secretary of the Used Clothing Association. He says many dealers in used clothing have had to put a hold on doing business as a result of high freight charges. He added that they are expecting the freight cost to come down for business to resume in earnest.
I think the freight has affected almost all importers. Majority of Ghanaians import from China. And then the freight has hit everybody. Yeah, the freight, it depends on the province where you are, importing from. Some of the province takes 9,800, some takes 10,800, some takes 10,500, and sometimes 7,500. And also depends on the month or the time you are, loading the container from where you are shipping it from to. So it also depends. Sometimes they will call you, your suppliers will call you and tell you the freight has increased. Yes, and therefore you have to accept or stop business. Yeah, and many people have stopped business because of the freight, because the freight has taken all the profit and it has entered into their capital. So majority of the people have stopped business, waiting for the freight to come down. And we were expecting that after the Chinese break, the freight would come down, but it hasn't.
In this instance, the final consumers are made to bear the cost of these international shocks. Meanwhile, at Kantamanto Market in Accra, some traders who source products from local importers are unhappy with those on top of the supply chain. Most traders we spoke to say they are somewhat indifferent to any impending increase, or perhaps they are simply fed up. According to them, the cost of goods never decreases in their line of business. For instance, although government has reduced the benchmark value on all imported goods by 50%, the traders say the benefits did not trickle down to those down the supply chain.
The whole thing is the importers, they normally gain, for that thing that the government do, they normally gain it. You know, because we don't get the right thing here, because they go to the port to deliver the goods. The civilian that we go and buy one after the one, we don't get that benefit.
Although government has reduced the benchmark value on all imported goods, the benefits do not trickle down to us. Those who sell to us do not want to reduce their prices. We are pleading with government to ensure that there is compliance.
Business isn't going well because the price of goods keeps going up. Importers don't want to reduce the price of items, although the benchmark values have been reduced.
Following week, no, we connect 1,001, 1,002, 1,050.
What I want the government to do is maybe if they reduce some taxes or some of the the import, if they reduce it for them, they have to do follow up. They have to follow up that, oh, the goods that we've reduced for the importers, is it affecting the consumers? Have they reduced some of the prices that we used to buy from the importers? That's my concern, because anytime that they will reduce, they will say that, oh, they've reduced something from the port for them. Our goods, they don't reduce it.
Increases in freight charges add an element of inflation on goods consumed locally, especially in a country that depends heavily on importation. COVID-19 pandemic has caused shocks to global supply lines and international trade. However, this provides Ghana the opportunity to increase its domestic production capacity and export potential. In the interim, businesses are still hopeful that freight charges will be reduced to pre-COVID-19 levels to give local businesses the boost it deserves.